So thank you very much for having me. I have a proposition for you, which is to think about the ways in which search is going to change. That's really where I want to end up this talk. But now we live in a world where people use Google all the time. And so it's lovely to come to a place like this and to see the studies that are being done, the research being done here, because I live in the Wild West. I have to deal with all the queries that you don't have to deal with. And so to your question, what does user happiness mean? It means that no matter who you are, or what kind of wacky query task you have, we can give you some kind of sense of happiness. You get the answer you need, or some kind of result that satisfies you. Okay? Now, what I want to do is actually start this by showing you a short video clip. Have you seen the college humor video if Google were a guy? Has anybody seen this? Okay, I'm going to show it to you because often in humor there is a deep insight. So let me show this to you. Let you think about it for a second.
Next.
Hello there.
Is today tomorrow New Zealand?
Yes.
Foot same length Europe.
What?
Inch same length Europe.
Gmail.com. What is Bitcoin?
Butthole. Gross, fat, butthole, dick, poop.
Is that what kids are into these days? Are your parents home?
Miss Pippi.
You mean Mississippi? Hey, I'm not a dictionary.
My grandson Nathan.
Song that goes meow 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 meow.
Girls' college.
Let me see. Right.
College girls. Nude.
Really?
Patrick Castles. Pat Castles. Pat Castles funny.
Bitcoin market value.
Weed amount legal NYC.
Patrick Castles funny writer, college humor.
Are you going to do this all day?
What is prime meridian?
Head got cute.
Do you mean hedgehog?
Head got cute.
God, do you mean hedgehog?
Hedgehog's cute.
Adderall Max Dose.
Yeah.
Adderall Max Dose, 165-pound man.
Okay.
Adderall Max Dose, 165-pound man, 20 years old. Adderall overdose signs.
Download Firefox.
Ever heard of Chrome?
How to buy Bitcoin.
Titanic drawing. Titanic movie drawing. Titanic movie drawing scene. Kate Winslet tits. Round 2.
Facebook.com, my grandson Nathan.
No.
Dexter based on real.
Free hamster.
Unbuy Bitcoin.
Boston Bomber.
It's real tragedy.
Cute one.
Oh, fucking shit.
Welcome to my life. I think that's actually an interesting piece of video, partly because you see all kinds of interesting phenomena that we really see. The query reformulation, the insistent query reformulation when you haven't changed the query. I mean, all these kinds of things where even word order matters. College girls, girls college, right? Those kinds of things. So I'm going to change the story slightly here. I'm going to do a little Gedanken Experiment, which is the same story as you just saw, but without the cute video. Okay, so suppose you're at Google and you get a query like this, Jaguar. What do you do? Well, you know what we do, right? If you're on a phone, we try to give you disambiguation page. We give you multiple interpretations. You know that story here. Well, what about a query like this? A month ago, this was a meaningless query. This would have given you nothing. Now, of course, it gives you a lot of stuff. Okay? This is an interesting phenomena in our world that we have to deal with all the time. News, rapidly changing things. This is a query that appears fairly often. I know exactly the result to give you. There's only one result that will work, right? How about a query like this? Okay, these are navigational queries. They're a huge block of our queries traffic. I know you never think about this, mostly because this is a solved problem. Okay, this is easy. We got that one. My son, Nathan, Facebook, whatever. This is also a really frequent query. It's always in the top 20, and I have no idea why. This is one of those mysteries of life. another mystery is why this is another really common query. I think people believe they're going to cause the recursion heat death of Google, but it doesn't work that way. All right, we just say, you know, it's a search engine. But then we also get lots of queries like this. Now, you all recognize that, right? I mean, the reason that this works out so well, we resolve it correctly and give you Britney Spears, the singer. But we also know about all the other ways to spell Britney Spears. And there are like 20,000. And I'm not making that up. People can't spell. This is a deep thing to know. They can't spell the word sex. I mean, let alone Britney Spears has an unusual spelling. So think about, you know, Google as a search engine company. We have to deal with this entire range of behaviors. And if we think about sort of the canonical model of how people search, you know, they sort of start with task identification. They think about what they're going to do, what their tactics and strategy will be. No, they don't. They only think about tactics. If you're lucky, they think one move ahead. The existence of strategy is very rare. But they do this, and they click on a few pages, and you know what happens. They find a result. Maybe they're happy. Maybe they continue searching. And we go round and round the mulberry bush. Now, what I'm going to do for the rest of the talk here is give you some data that goes along with this. Okay? Now, you know about query revisions. We've seen the cartoon version of it before. Bitcoin, coin buy, Bitcoin sell. Now, here's the reality. If I take, say, 50 million queries, and I do the average mean session length is 2.2, right? The long tail is extraordinarily long, okay? So I love this graph because this is not my graph. This is from Shi-Nu thesis, studying library catalog systems. It's the same damn graph. Every graph I have in my catalog looks like that. It's this extraordinarily long tail thing. Our median session length is around 5. Depends on the day of the week when you do that. The fraction of task revisions where you start with task X and you end up in task Y is roughly a third, which is astonishing. But what happens is that people come in with, I need to understand diabetes. And they leave going, I know about glucose test strips. Okay, they start with one thing and they learn a little bit and they end up revising their query. It's not a neat model, right? So what happens in typical long queries is stuff like this, or long sessions, okay? This is by definition a long session. It's greater than length 2. So the task that was given or stated by this person, this is one of his own tasks. I'm trying to buy a specific fishing reel. Starts with searching for a specific place to buy it, and then gets right down into the weeds, looking for tech specs, having figured out that he wants to buy this specific thing. Revise, gets to the bottom, I need to buy it with a coupon. Okay? So this is a kind of a nice, neat one. The thing is, a lot of these things are not so neat. One of the things about that video I liked at the very beginning is it shows the interleaving. People come in, they ask constantly different questions. Within an individual, you get huge amounts of interleaving of tasks. Happens a lot. People are doing X, X1, X2, X3. Oh, Z. I'm going to go over here and do Z for a while. What was I doing? Oh, X, right. Okay. That kind of multitasking happens all the time. And a more common kind of occurrence when you're getting into these long tasks is something like this. The task here was to figure out how many people have bought the new Harry Potter book so far. This is the set of query revisions. This is a terrible experience. It's a really hard thing to find. And so what's happening is you're seeing somebody thrash in query revision space as they try to figure out what's the magic incantation. What can I say in Googleese that will get me the number I seek, right? All they want is a number between 1 and 20 million, and they just don't know which one. So it's a very simple task in some sense, but actually figuring out how to get from here to there is tough. So people get stuck in these revision cycles. Now, if you remember, Harry Potter appeared in every single one of those, that's fine, but then there's other words that keep recurring. They keep doing ineffectual query formulations, partly because they don't have any sense of if they're getting closer to the result or not. Here, yeah, thanks. Seat right up front. So they get stuck in these patterns of ineffective query reforms. I know it sounds a little bit like politics, but it's, you know, they keep doing stuff, trying to make things better, and they end up thrashing around for a while. So here's the harsh reality of searches from our perspective. If you look at the total number of searches by user per week, the average is about 9, okay? And that's roughly the distribution you see there. So you can think about segmenting all the searchers in the universe into high, medium, and low, falling along the sort of obvious cut boundaries there, okay? What this tells me is that the people in the light end and the middle end, they're not doing a heck of a lot. They're doing maybe a query a day on average. However, that's the damaging view of statistics, right? So let me tell you what seems to be really happening. First, I got to tell you about this sequence chart idea. So if you take a sequence of queries over time, you throw away the time and you just think about sequence. So this is query number 1, query number 2, query number 3. So you increment by 1 for each subsequent query, right? And then as these things pile up, you start to see patterns that recur. So this is every time unit going along. This is a light user. So this particular person did 27 queries over this month-long period, so doing 1.8 per week. You see a query, 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 wait, query, query. You see this is not a very frequent heavy user. Here's somebody more in the medium category. And the thing I like about this notation is you can start to see runs, okay? Query, 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 all in one day. Okay, so this is one person. Oh, then they took a couple days off. Query, query, query. So you get these interesting sort of rhythmic episodes of people doing queries. Now, when we start to look at people, large numbers of people, heavier users then, guess what, have longer runs. And they do it more frequently as well. But they still have noticeable gaps. So if we look over a period of 41 days, you can start to see these patterns emerge as you look at light users, medium, heavy users, and we focus in on one. One of the characteristics of heavy users is that they not only more frequent in time, meaning the fewer time between days between subsequent searches, but they end up with these runs. That's what these vertical bars are. Okay? So on average, what's happening for heavy users is that they search like everybody else, except when they get involved in a task, and then they do these long sequences of searches. So here we see a bunch of users, and you can immediately spot the heavy users. Run, 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 run. And now the full reality of this gets to be clear when you see the full graph. That guy is really interesting. That's roughly, what, 700 queries or something like that over the space of a month. I mean, just, you don't want to know. He's really interested in exactly one topic. And that's characteristic of heavy searchers. They go very deep in one topic. And you know it's true of you, right? and you, right? We are heavy searchers. We are very heavy searchers. So if you look now at sort of the more standard population, so here we've got a set of people. We have heavy searchers, and we have all the light searchers down here. And this is where the sessions are very, very short. You get 1, maybe 2 queries if you're lucky. Okay? So in general, what we do is we tend to study only that population up and to the left. What question?
Question. Is Google learning from the behavior of a single user and adapting its response to that? Because if you don't, I wonder why is that interesting, what people do?
We learn from everybody. We have all these machine learning. The easy one was this.
Look,
Yeah.
if I have a sequence of questions,
Right.
the nth question.
Hang on to that question. We're going to come back to it at the very end. It's an excellent question. The other reason why you do visualization, as you all know, is because of things like this. See that? Error in the data. Nobody knew that 2-week gap was missing until I plotted it out. I go, oh yeah, oh my gosh, you know. So we're looking now at sort of the behavior of people. This is sort of individuals who each thread through there as one person. But when you start to think about if we're going to understand people in aggregate, what is it that they're doing? Here's query volume for the single query term champagne, 2007. Guess what? No surprise, right? No surprise. I'll let you figure out what's happening on February 14th. Okay? But these kinds of things are really striking because here, for example, is the query volume by week for Spain. Okay? The thing I want to point out here is you get a couple different slumps during the year. You get a slump here. This is Holy Week in Spain, big deal. Okay? This is summer vacation. This is Christmas. Okay? So the point of telling you this is that we have all of these kinds of different effects that are going on. Every day, somewhere in the world, there's a slump because of a holiday. Trust me, it's a day for somebody somewhere, right? So these things are really interesting because when you start to look at particular topics, say your particular topic, you start to see really interesting blips like this and depressions like I just showed you. Watermelon in the bottom left peaks in the summertime in the northern hemisphere, right? You start to see where this is going, right? If you, for example, look at a search term like kayak and you plot southern hemisphere versus northern hemisphere, they are reciprocals of each other because kayaks occur only in the summertime. Okay. I like this one. Yeah, people do really search for the term full moon every 30 days, or 28.2 days, right? You get the idea. So when we study these things, we do like you. We bring people in the lab, and we ask them questions like this. So we don't show them the picture, so don't look at the picture. But we ask people a question: what color is the umbrella being held by the woman walking in the park with a young girl in a white dress, the center of La Grande Jatte? Right? And we run a bunch of people through, and we watch their behavior. And we coded, in this case, their behavior. So each vertical slice here is one person solving the problem. These people, good job. 1 query, 2 queries, they're good. What's going on down here? Why are these people having such a hard time? It's a simple question. Now, it will probably take you 1 or 2 queries because you're all heavy searchers. You know how this works, right? But people who are down there, we want to make their experience better. I want them to be happier, right? So what we can do, since these are lab studies, we can look at in very microscopic detail what's going on. This is my spreadsheet, the log of their events. And I can look exactly what's going on. And this particular person took, 27 steps, I think, to solve this problem. And in some cases, they're going to Frugal, our shopping service. Some cases, they're going to Scholar. Like, why are you on Scholar? What's going on here? Well, what happened in the first case was that they did that search, La Grande Jatte by Georges Seurat, and they got a shopping result. And they wasted some time in there. Okay, they did another query, and they got the Scholar result on concurrent programming. Who knew? So what's going on here is that people are seeing one boxes. That's what those things are called. Those insertions where you get a special result is a one box. So what's fascinating is when I look at these different queries, so all these queries do not produce a one box. It's just regular results, okay? But if you do this query, you get an image one box. You do this query, you get a product one box. You do this one, and so on, okay? So we're trying to help out. We're trying to make you happier by accelerating you to the result. But we don't really know your intent. That's the problem. Because if you do a query like La Grande Jatte, maybe you want an image. But what's fascinating to me about this is this query and this query, La Grande Jatte in quotes versus not quotes, give you very different results. Here we don't think you should see anything. Here we give you the image one box. Okay? If you change it just a little bit here, you use pick versus image, you end up in the book category. Okay, so what's happening is that these attempts to make the search process accelerate, make you get more quickly to your target result, is sort of being accelerated in most cases by these one boxes, but we have losses. We worry about the losses, because the people who had 1 or 2 queries, they're good. We don't have to worry about them. We've already made them happy. But people who get these one boxes, we have discovered, they have to be precise. Because if they're not precise, we end up sending people down rat holes. That's bad. Here's another example. We asked people, what's the convenience store that's located at 26th Street in Denver? Now, the difference between these two queries is just the presence of the zip code there. So in this case, if you did not include a zip code, all these poor people ended up spending a lot of time fooling around trying to figure it out. These people, they all got the answer like that. Okay? So if the zip code triggers a one box that shows you the map, we know that has helped out. So big hint, big heuristic, if someone asks for a zip code, give them a map. They're asking something geo. How else can we generalize that? Okay. So we do a lot of studies like this, and I want to summarize a few of the insights that I've learned over my 9 years at Google. First off, your intuitions about search behavior are terrible. My intuitions are still terrible after 9 years. In particular, your intuitions are terrible. So you have to take it personally, because that's, at the end of the day, why we do studies. Right? I've been designing UIs forever, and I still get it wrong. The number one fallacy I hear, it's intuitive because that's the way I do it. Okay? And I'm representative of all humanity, of course. The number two fallacy I hear is that's the way my mom would do it. Right? You've used your mom as the avatar for all of the rest of humanity, right? Here's the deep truth. You are statistically insignificant. So is your mom. Here's the deeper truth. You are a few sigma away from the mean. The fact that you understood what I said indicates how far away from the mean you are. So are all your friends. So the real question for us, and I'm including you in this, me and you and all of us doing research in this area, is how do we get beyond that? So this talk is really a compilation of different studies I've done. That first one was the one-box precision study. One of the things we do is also try to ask people, how often do you search versus how often do we know you search? How do you feel about your search? How confident are you in that? And so there's a nice table from the Pew study, and it's basically consonant with our data, so I'll show you theirs. Summary, 92% of people say they're confident in their search study, in their searchability. 92%, the vast majority, okay? Deep insight, that's socially normed. If you go and talk to mechanics in LA, there will be a guy who say, I'm the best searcher. And it's with respect to his peer group, right? You go and talk to somebody at NASA Ames Research Center, okay? They will both say they're confident in their ability to be good searchers. They are very different in their actual skills. But the thing is, that mechanics group does not talk to the rocket scientists. They have no idea what each other knows, okay? Second big thing, 66% of all people search, less than one time a day. That's what that first data set meant. So the fact that you did 2 searches today already puts you way at the tail of the distribution. You're all tail waggers. So let me give you an example of this. How far on the tail you are. A fundamental skill that we all know is Control F, right? If you speak Mac, it's Command F, same thing. Or edit fine, I don't care what it is. If you're an Emacs, it's something else, but same skill, right? So if I ask you, for example, to go and look at in the California Vehicle Code for an instance of the word pocket bike, so that phrase, take you what? 2, 3, maybe 4 seconds, right? You would open up the page, do a Command F, and you would find it down there, right? Okay, question. If you're using Command F or Control F, how many people do you suppose know that skill? Everybody in this room knows that skill, right? So, okay, hands up. More than 50% of people know this skill, okay? We're going to say around 50? Okay, 75%? Okay, good. So there are interesting features about Control F to know. For example, in Chrome, you get the highlighting in the scroll bar. You also get the number of results here. So if you don't know Control F, you don't know that either, right? So here we did one study where we brought in a lot of people and we gave them all tasks like this. These are Trek-style tasks. But which 2 French New World colonies did the British capture during the 7 Years' War? Okay, just usual, ordinary search tasks. And we found, this is the killer result here for this whole study. We did all these variants on the search ranking algorithm and variants on the displays, and it didn't matter. Everything we tried, and we tried 16 different variations, were all beat by giving them a 30-second video showing them how to use Control F. So these interventions, they're slower, they're more errorful, and they cost real money. This is a 30-second video I made in my spare time. And it radically improved performance. In fact, it improved it by 12%. It decreased time to result by 12%. So if you don't know Control F, like your mom doesn't know Control F, teach your mom Control F, give her 12% of her life back. So we've done multiple surveys. At this point, we've now surveyed well over 5,000 people, and I've given tests to at least 1,000 people. In the United States, 90% do not know this. Do not know this, okay? Now, what's equally frightening is that if you add US K-12 teachers, half of them don't know this either, okay? Question is, who's teaching Control F? Answer, no one, okay?
That's a good question. Did you control for age and things? I'm thinking about at least a third of, or maybe half of the people in this room, we used to turn on a computer and see a C prompt.
Yeah.
So we had to know those things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So is there an age?
No, this is everybody. Everybody. And I also did, it's not on this slide, but I did another study of Firefox users, 50,000 Firefox users. How many people in Firefox? Firefox, the browser of the elite, right? How many suppose, 7% used it? 93% never ever found the feature under any manifestation.
Although then, Firefox, I think, doesn't even need a control that you just start typing and it will do that.
Mm-hmm. This was before that feature was shipped. Yeah. So this is a really frightening thing. And if you know Control F, it changes the way you think. And this is true for a lot of search skill. If you know this particular skill, it changes the kinds of questions you can think about to ask. So here's a good question. How many times does the word behold appear in the King James Bible? Okay, you could go figure it out. Now, let me ask you a different question. How long do you suppose it would take you to figure this out? Is this a 30-second question or is this a 3-hour question? Yeah, I know what you do. You download and then write the Perl script, right? No. Let me show you. This is what I did. This is actually a screen recording of me solving this problem the very first time. It's 35 seconds long. And I looked for the King James Bible. I went to Project Gutenberg because I knew they would have a clean copy. I downloaded it, and so I'm not cutting anything out of this. This includes the download time. So I click it. I click on the plain text. It comes into the browser. I'm a little slow. I type Control F, behold. And behold, there's the number. Okay, 35 seconds start to stop. I have no idea what that gap is. I think it's the book of Acts. Okay? Okay, but you see what I'm saying? Knowing a little bit of knowledge can actually really change the way you think, change the kinds of problems you think are possible, change the way you think about the world. One way we get at this is I do a lot of field studies. I've done in my career just since I've been in Google, about 300 field studies. I go out, I come to your house and say, show me how you search, right? And I sit and I watch, and I do the videos, and I do a lot of basically anthropological studies, okay? So it's important to do this because, logs are great, but they don't capture a lot of the affective response. I've literally been in people's houses where they've done a search and they've yelled at the computer. There is no entry in the log profile for yell, okay? But I see it and I hear it, and I get to see what's going on. So,
Does Google have a tutorial, which I never heard about tutorial, for example?
Ask me that question at the very end again. I'm queuing you up. You got 2 questions to ask at the end, because I got excellent answers. Yeah, I have good answers. So here's a sample of a log entry. I'm going to show you the video here in a second. But I asked this woman, which actor or actress won the most Oscars in the history of the Academy Award? Simple question. Again, it would probably take you a minute or so to figure this out. I just want to know his or her name. So in 12 seconds into this video, she does the query actor most Oscars, and at 1:15 she does the query actor most Oscars Academy. Okay, not a particularly great rewrite, but here, slightly scrambled. That's the transcript, but I'm going to show you the video here. This is her trying to solve this problem.
So this is celebrity with most Oscars. The actor, most, I'm just going to try that, most Oscars. Don't know. News results for actor most Oscars. Oh, and then that would be currently Brokeback Writer Voices Truth and Oscars Relevance. I don't know. A lot of those things.
This doesn't show up in log files.
Filipinos ready for gay flicks. How does that have to be? So that's where you can get surprised. You're like, where is this? How does this relate? Bond. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Okay, hold on just a second. Let me ask you a quick question. When you click on news, I think it was news or something, did you realize that you were in the news section?
Oh, no, I didn't.
So she's very smart. She actually has her own website, her own television show. I mean, she's pretty accomplished. And yet she was stuck in the news mode. Now, actually, at 12 seconds, I think it's 15 seconds into it, she reads aloud, news section, actor most Oscars. She reads that sentence aloud and doesn't process it. It goes right through eyes to mouth and not through brain. Okay? So she doesn't realize it. This happens a lot. So what are we doing or not doing in the interface to make this kind of difference between search results and news results evident? So from a user's perspective, what they really want to know is what can they do? What can they read? How can they interpret? How can they understand? So I can tell you what the query language is for Google, kinda. Right? I mean, there's a lot of terms. There's a lot of special operators like file type and site colon and so on. I can even tell you what triggers the one boxes. Okay? But one of the behaviors we see a lot of are people groping for the one box. I know I got weather once. How do I do it again? I'll do this. Right? But fascinating is try to understand how people in the large think about this. So I just showed you an example of the way I would do a field study. Do a lot of those. We also do log analysis, obviously, but we also do different kinds of panel studies. So this is trying to get at, in this case, this is a diary study that we ran. I actually am going to merge two of them together. This is our pilot. We went it with 36 people. Nice gender breakdown, nice age breakdown, nice occupation breakdown. You know, very straightforward thing. The thing we did here with the diary study was every day people would do their searches, or not, depending on the day. But then at the end of the day, they would go in and self-label their search session. So they would say what it was they were trying to do. I was trying to find out what other games we could buy for a Wii Fit balance board. Status, gave up. Satisfaction, whatever. So they could self-rate their satisfaction on the task. They were identifying task boundaries for us, so we didn't have to write those classifiers, right? So we had all this, we had this search, this is their search, this is what they did, this is the time they did it, so we knew in very high resolution what was going on. So we did that with, I guess it was 36 people, and then a little bit later we ran it with a large number of people. This first one was run over 2 weeks, we got 1,200 tasks, we then clustered it. I'll tell you the results in a second. Because we then did the same thing again with 226 people, nationwide, US and Canada. Very nice. We specifically matched it to the US-Canada population by occupation, age, and so on. So we actually had some people who never finished high school. We had some people who were postgraduates. We ran it late November 2009 to March of 2010. And it's fascinating because we got a ton of data. 31,000, almost 32,000 searches. We have roughly 7,000, almost 8,000 tasks, self-labeled, okay? Here's a big tip. You're all researchers. This is really hard work. You would think that having people identify their own task boundaries and giving you a yes-no evaluation of it would be simple. You get the log file back, right? It's going through your program you wrote, right? It took us about 2 person years to clean the data. It was majorly hard. Okay, so hint, if you're going to do a diary study, talk to someone who's already done it before you launch it. Because there's a lot of craft work involved in doing a diary study. And I can tell you, I could give a whole talk just about the craft of doing that. But anyway, the point of this is we did this big analysis where we're looking for the kinds of behaviors, what their tasks were, and so on. It's kind of not that different from the population in large. Number of events per task were roughly 3. Again, very short sessions. Number of words per query, 3.06. Characters per query. I'm telling you this now because I'm going to argue this is going to be irrelevant in the near term. Just keep that in mind, okay? So what we did then with those thousands of tasks is we filled up a couple of rooms with stickies, and we manually did affinity diagramming. Whoa, yeah. We had thousands upon thousands of stickies. We actually figured out that we could print them. We ran them through the printer so we could figure it out and actually go back to logs. It was great. But we basically broke it down into these different categories. I want to focus here on just these 4 because in some ways these are solved problems. If you're doing a navigational query like eBay, we can get you there. You're completely satisfied, no question. We know these are solved. This is getting better, but these 4 are still hard problems. So let me show you what I mean. These are the 4 categories down here. Knowledge building is basically trying to find information to support my understanding of something big and complicated. You can see the number of events here for these are fairly large. It takes a large number of searches. And what's interesting about this is the mean elapsed time here on these tasks is 800 seconds. That's a lot of time for a search task. Okay? So knowledge building is one, selecting, try to identify one particular item out of a larger set, find a particular instance and then refining that choice, exploring next steps to take in some task. So those were those kinds of behaviors, but now this is the distribution by frequency. Okay? So those 4 that I just pointed out to you, they're kind of here in the middle. They're not particularly frequent, they're just ordinary, but they're deeply important. So this is where people spend an awful lot of time. They're also, interestingly enough, they're the sort of tasks that are the least satisfactory tasks. The other one that's in there that's also not very satisfactory is how to. Now this study is a couple years old. What's changed in the last few years is that number for how to has gotten better because of YouTube videos. YouTube videos rock with respect to fixing something or respect to learning how to. You can find a YouTube video, and I'm not making this up, on how to do a live kidney donor transplant surgery. Don't look it up now, just wait. Okay? But the nature of YouTube has changed the way people think about how to information. You want to do a kidney transplant? You want a donor stock? No problem, go to YouTube. What's so fascinating about this is that we have these different methods. We have these field studies which are great, very detailed. You can do order of 50 users. We can do these panels where we can do survey kinds of questions and so on. Or we can do query logs which have their uses. Now, I'm going to show you, I'm going to blast through these. This is another whole talk in these 2 slides, but I want to show you it anyway. The way we started to think about this is that when people start with a query and they click on a page, they reformulate that query, change it again, click on another page, and they end up on an event horizon. I'm in the middle of my process now. What do I do? And so one way to think about this in sort of a rational utilitarian perspective is that the user is constantly performing this rolling evaluation, which incorporates lots of different factors. So you have a bunch of options at any one point. I can quit, close the browser, go home, eat a bonbon, reformulate my query. Which would you rather do? Okay? Remember, most of the world is not like you. They're not high need for cognition people. They're not intrinsically motivated to solve a particular task. Most of their query experience is less than 1 a day. Okay? So they're not really practiced at this, even though they may think that they're highly competent. So building on the sense-making paper from a couple years ago, you can think of it kind of like this, where you've got the utility of making the next move, which is everything, including eating the bonbon. Does that ever happen in your lab? No. lab studies are intrinsically weird situations. And I'm punning on that term, right? They're weird because when a person comes into your lab, they do not have the option of just taking off. I'm going to go get a grilled cheese sandwich now. Sorry. Okay? But this is what happens in our world. So people have this function of probability of success given some action, the cost of taking that action, and so on, plus the investment you've paid to date. Now, one way this shows up in our studies is when we contrast lab problems with problems that people come in with, what we call own problems. So you come in my lab, tell me your problem, you're going to solve it in front of me. Okay? What's fascinating is these self-chosen tasks, this is significantly shifted to the right. That is, people will spend more time working on the task they brought in than the task you give them. So I might ask you, find a pair of cute brown shoes. If you're in my lab, 20 seconds max, right? If it's your brown shoes, your feet, 20 hours maybe, right? So we get this interesting change in the distribution depending on the motivation behind the task, which is why I find field studies so interesting. Because I get to watch real people being cued by their environments for tasks that are real to them. There's nothing quite like watching a young mother with her 2-month-old in her arm doing a query like this with one finger, right? Because she's trying to figure out when the next appointment for her kid is. I can't get that in the lab. I can't get that from query logs. Okay? So I want to show you a couple quick examples here of the way in which I think the search behavior, our search business is changing. Now, you might have seen some of these, but I'm going to show this to you because it's fun. This is a live demo of spoken queries.
Who painted the Sistine Chapel?
Sistine Chapel ceiling was created by Michelangelo.
What is x squared plus y cubed? What is the electron configuration of lithium?
The electron configuration of lithium is T2S1.
Show me a picture of Guernica by Picasso.
Here you go. Some pictures related to Guernica.
So you see where this is going.
What was the name of the dog on the Lewis and Clark expedition?
Okay, we didn't get that one. Okay, but it's not a very far reach until we'll get the dog. The dog's name was Seaman. And it's interesting to think about the ways in which search is changing. The query length is what? 3 words? Every query there was more than 5. Okay? It was also the beginning, you could start to see, of a conversation. And so you can imagine your 6th grader coming to you and saying, what about these northern lights? What's going on with the aurora borealis? And this is, again, a live demonstration, but it will leave you, I think, with this nice sense.
According to Library of Congress, polar lights are a natural phenomenon found in both the northern and southern hemispheres that can be truly awe-inspiring. Northern lights are also called by their scientific name aurora borealis, and southern lights are called aurora australis.
We're really switching to conversational mode here.
What is the cause of the aurora borealis?
According to science, the auroras, both surrounding the north magnetic pole and south magnetic pole, occur when highly charged electrons from the solar wind interact with elements in the Earth's atmosphere.
Show me pictures of how the solar wind creates the aurora.
Pictures of how the solar wind create the aurora. Here you go.
What is the solar wind made of?
According to qrg.northwestern.edu, the solar wind is a stream of energized, charged particles, primarily electrons and protons, flowing outward from the sun through the solar system at speeds as high as 900 kilometers per second and at a temperature of 1 million degrees. It is made of plasma.
We could go on and ask about plasma. Now, I'm trying to anticipate your question because I'm a one box for you, which is, no, these are not personalized to you yet.
No, the
okay.
question
Oh, darn it.
could not be misinformation. Let's suppose I ask a question.
Yes.
Is there a global warming?
Yes.
Do I get
Yep.
the whole point
Yep.
of view of that or what?
Yeah. No, that's an excellent question. So for the camera, the question is, how do I know that's right, basically? How do you know anything's right? You have to validate. So one of the skills, in anticipation of your next question, is how do we teach our students this? How do we teach ourselves these skills? Validating, authenticating, understanding credibility issues is actually something we need to teach. Right, I completely believe you. I teach these in my online classes. So I've got a couple MOOCs, massive open online classes. So by this point, when I just checked the logs the other day, I've had over 500,000 students take my classes. This is one of the things I'm trying to teach. Not the conversational mode, but the fact that you need to question everything, which pisses some people off because they just want authoritative statements. But we are not in the business of making authoritative statements. What we do in this case is we're looking for texts that are highly agreed upon. So there's a consensus that that's what's going on with the solar wind. Now we may find out, actually the solar wind is made of tiny little green frogs at a temperature of 1,000,000 degrees. We could change. I mean, you know, medical science's perspective on cholesterol has changed over the past 50 years. So this is all provisional, I think. But if you don't have the deep understanding of that, or know how to check credibility, then I think you're actually an impoverished searcher. And we need to get over that. So, almost done. Is to return to this model, how does this kind of canonical model of the search process change when you're talking to it? Answer, I don't know yet. I mean, we're just at the point now where mobile searches are more than 50% of our total query volume. That means the total number of spoken queries is going up like that. I think we're at the cusp of a change where stuff is changing with respect to the way people think about getting information, at least on Google. And I want to claim that the multiple method approach of this I mentioned with panels and log analysis and so on and field studies is really the only way to sort of get at what's really happening in people's minds and what they really understand. Because, you know, this is all up for grabs at this point. We're busily shipping new versions of Google every single day. So what I'm talking about now is going to be different in a year. And I think this is an interesting challenge for, you know, information retrieval, information sciences world. Because all of a sudden, the world is different today than it was yesterday. Thank you very much.
All right, so we have a few minutes for questions. We also have people joining online, and Steve, you can bring up, you know, their question as well. Michael?
The most feature that I most want in Google that it doesn't have is what Microsoft briefly called stuff I've seen. And it's been just suggested for years as search only in the pile of things that I once had in front of my eyes.
That you've already seen.
Yes.
We have the opposite of that. Show me stuff I've never seen before. Search tools, select the option, what's it called? Previously unseen. I'll show you later, but we have that. I mean, but it's not the opposite. You're asking for stuff I've already clicked on.
Yeah, this is the problem of I once saw something, I didn't write it down, I forgot it.
No, sure, search your web history.
It doesn't go back far.
You didn't turn it on soon enough. Mine goes back to 2004.
You don't have some stupid e-college system instructing you that if you you have to clear your browser because they messed up your cookies.
Peace. I understand. I totally understand. Yeah, but
more relevant question. I was studying people's driving directions years ago. About half the homemakers in New Jersey can't read a map.
Right.
Do you have any way of telling the people who want the maps from the ones who don't?
Oh, interesting question. I assume so, but I've never looked in those log files, so I don't really know. I assume people who click on the show me the written directions would stand out versus just show me the map thing, but I don't really know. Yes?
You know, one of the key issues in mobile search, as opposed to our experience of immobile search, is, as far as I know, there haven't been any significant studies on differences in the kinds of information problems or tasks
Right.
and the kinds
Yeah.
of queries.
Yeah.
If there have been at Google, are you permitted to talk about them?
I can talk about some of them.
Yeah.
I mean, as you can imagine, the difference between, the question was, how do mobile queries differ from desktop queries, basically. Yeah, we study that out the wazoo because it's really, really important to us. But I can tell you a couple things. Sort of, you won't be surprised by any of them, but we have data for this. Fact-finding queries are really frequent on mobile. So population of Japan. What is 20,000 leagues in miles? That kind of stuff. The second most, actually maybe it's neck and neck right now, is maps queries, direction queries. Geo-reference queries are really, really important. Pizza near me, that kind of stuff. And it's interesting because constructions like pizza near me don't occur so often in desktop, but it occurs all the time on the phone, okay? So that kind of stuff really is growing as a fraction of the total query volume. Let's go down here. I'll come back.
Following up on that,
Yeah.
how about in terms of comparing across PC and mobile in terms of searching for the same information? That is, how do people
Yeah.
do better, worse, effective, more effective?
Yeah.
How much does the platform seem to play into outcomes and
So
satisfaction?
does platform vary satisfaction overall, basically? Yeah, the big surprise to me, it doesn't seem to make much difference. And I think the reason is, this is speculation on my part, I think people, when they ask questions on their phone, are doing kind of phone compatible questions. They're already gated by the device. So they're not totally interchangeable. But you tend to ask MAPSy, Regio kinds of questions on your mobile device.
Are you doing any lab studies where you say how will the phone group
Yeah.
do versus the PC group
Well,
in solving the same problem?
So part of the issue there is, tell me what a phone is. Is it a phablet? Is it, I can get anything from a watch up to my giant wall-sized monitor. And so it's kind of a function of more of the display space and its weight. That's the right way to think about it. Because if people who have tablets, right, that's a mobile device. It's also a laptop. But it's we're in an interesting space where it's unclear that it's a sharp dividing line, and the data doesn't seem to support it. So, okay, go back here.
The spoken query system you showed that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering that how you're handling words which are like ambiguating. Like for example, in the very first slide you showed the word like jaguar. So like if I start like what is a jaguar? There are multiple.
It doesn't do anything special. So I speak it versus type it is exactly the same. Okay. I just lied. I realized we did something different on mobile. Yeah, sorry. The dialect of Google that lives on mobile right now, if you say a word like Apple, it will give you a disambiguation page, or a set of options. Do you mean the computer? Do you mean the fruit? Do you mean whatever? That's not on desktop, at least not yet. So right at the moment, mobile has a disambiguation thing. So I haven't tried it with Jaguar, so somebody should try it. See what the story is. I promised you the next question.
In journalism, there is a difference in journalists
Yep.
who are supposed to give facts
Yes.
and opinion makers.
Right.
It seems to me what you are describing now is not search, it is opinion. And
Why
opinion
is it opinion?
Because if I ask what is the cause of, or whether or not there is what
Right.
is exactly global
Right.
warming,
Right.
it is opinion. It is something which is very deep. and
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
How many planets are there?
I don't know.
That's not an acceptable answer.
Okay, but there is a fact, I can say, well, but you're right. In
Yeah.
some sense, there is a question of what is a planet, right?
Right,
but,
right.
But, okay, the standard Google, the Google that I am
Yeah.
used to,
Yes.
I ask a question and give me papers or something
Right.
various people said about this question.
Right.
And then I can judge somebody says
Yeah.
such a thing, I look who he is,
Right.
what is credential, and so on.
Yep. Yep.
Now, Google makes the answer, not
Right.
anybody specific.
Right.
And there's a kind of opinion. about
So yeah, I see what you're getting at, and there is a interesting split that's happening in the search world. One of which is traditional Google searching for documents, as opposed to answering a question. So there's question answering, right? So the question answering component has, I didn't point it out, but at the bottom there's actually a link you can click that will point you to where the data comes from. Okay, so it doesn't show you all the pieces of it, but it'll give you kind of a reference list, basically. So that starts to get at the answer. I agree with you, actually. We need to basically make that system better. So I agree with you. That's sort of an interesting area.
Publish the difference. People should know what they are.
People will not click on that link. I agree with you, but nobody's going to click on it. It's a lot of work for nobody to click on. I got to do one quick thing here. Jaguar. It gives me the cars, and it gives me the cars, and the fourth result is the cat.
I mean, you can do sort of like contextualize, right? Like if I'm in Florida or in Jacksonville, maybe I'm starting Jacksonville Jaguar.
Yeah, right. Or the team. Yeah, that's right. Okay. One last question. Great. You get to pick. It's your fault.
We have a couple of questions time. Yeah.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure I.
Okay.
Very interesting talk. Perfect examples for technology, human behavior co-evolution. But I'd really like to know how actually people's searching behavior change. How much is that led by Google's search engine design? And how much of those fundamental behavior never changed it in terms of how they select the information, in terms of the search behavior through so many years of the study?
Wow, that's a great question. Let's talk about that more over lunch. But the short answer is that there is a kind of coevolution. As I showed with the Control F Behold example, new capabilities allow new kinds of questions to show up. So I did this really nice analysis of people who took my class, the How to Be a Better Searcher class, and watched how much they used what they learned in the class for a couple weeks afterwards. A, they got better. B, they did more queries. C, they handled harder questions. Because I gave them new tools, they could now think of the world in a very different way. The best example of this is something like search by image. You know this, where I can drag an image into the Google's image search, and we'll search the space of internet images for something that matches that. All of a sudden, now people can take a random picture and say, where was that taken? And it will tell you. I mean, assuming it's in the set. But you can do all kinds of new stuff that was never possible before because of the enabling power of the tool.
One last question, Maria.
Hi, thanks for your talk.
Sure.
I'm curious about how circuitous searches are and the degree to which an initial query actually ends in a related result versus it brings them into interesting tangents of discovery. Have you done any research on that?
Yeah. So I mentioned there was a 30% task divergence thing. Yeah. So people start with task 1. I want to learn about diabetes. Search, 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 read, search, read, search, right? And all of a sudden they realize, I'm not going to learn all about diabetes, but I'm going to learn about this particular thing I need to know. So they reformulate their information need, okay? Or they classify what they just found as acceptable. And they say, oh, I mean, this happens a lot, particularly with students. I need to know everything about the Civil War, right? This happens all the time with reference librarians. A kid comes in and says, I need to know about the Civil War. Okay, let's talk. So what's happening is that without the intermediation of the reference librarian, people are doing that on their own. In some cases, I don't think they're doing it particularly well. Because, for example, when people have this deep-seated medical reference need, I really need to know about diabetes, they don't know how the world of diabetes is structured. They may learn all about insulin measurements and glucose measurements, but they may never learn about the threat of amputation because of circulatory problems.
Okay, so I guess you're answering my question. In some way, it sounds like, kind of reflecting what you were asking, that the way the search engine is set up, there isn't much opportunity to discover and kind of go into a new path or something. It kind of keeps you narrow and focused and inwardly.
I wouldn't have said it that way. I would say we actually work hard to give some diversity. So we have this magic knob where we for example, with the Jaguar example, the top level results give you the car, the animal, and I'm sure somewhere on there was the team as well as the Macintosh operating system. So we think about how to make diversity rise. So it's not 40 pages of car results. That doesn't help anybody who isn't exactly rich, right? So we think about those kind of issues a lot. But you're right, it's a delicate balancing act. It's like, if you ask me about the Civil War, my Grice's maxims are going to kick in and say, I bet she doesn't want to know all the details about the Battle of Bull Run, but you want to know a bigger overview. So we're trying to balance that, and as we go more and more to question answering, we have to be conscious about that. So that's an active area of work. Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
So let's thank Dan again.